YouTuber Maridhas has been arrested in Tamil Nadu for allegedly posting defamatory content online. Is the government of Tamil Nadu coming down heavily on dissent, or is the government of Tamil Nadu upholding its constitutional duty of preventing the spread of disinformation, misinformation, and defamatory content? That's something that we will highlight in this particular video. But first up, it deals with free speech. Article 19 of the Constitution gives a fundamental right to every citizen of India. And Article 19(1)(a) specifically talks about a fundamental right known as freedom of speech and expression. Say whatever you want to say, express whatever you want to express, use whichever medium you want to use to express yourself, write a song, make a movie, enact a play, draw a cartoon, no matter what you want to do, you have the freedom of speech and expression guaranteed by the Constitution under Article 19(1)(a) of the Constitution. But this fundamental right is not absolute. There are reasonable restrictions that can be imposed on your expression of free speech, freedom of speech and expression. What are those reasonable restrictions? Before we discuss that, let me tell you something very important. If you're preparing for the civil services examination and you want to enroll with an academy for your preparation, serious preparation for CSE 2027 or beyond, and now you are confused as to which subscription to choose, an academy plus or an academy iconic. I'll take 1 minute to explain the features of both. If you are self motivated, you don't need a mentor, you don't need a guide, you don't need somebody to evaluate your answers. You just want to attend the live classes, take the handouts, practice the quizzes on our platform, and you can prepare on your own. For you, it is Plus, which right now is available at 19,999. However, if you want more features, such as you want 14 standard books to be provided to you, including Lakshmikant, Spectrum publication on modern India, and 14 other books. If you want these 14 books delivered to your home, hard copies, if you want one on one mentorship with a qualified mentor who has already reached the interview stage, if you want the revision test series for prelims and mains, including evaluation, if you want all these copies to be delivered to your home, then for that there is Iconic subscription, which for the first time, Unacademy is providing a 50% discount on Unacademy Iconic subscription, and now it is available at 29,999. But this is only available for first 1,000 users. If you want this, you should apply and use this code IS English to subscribe to an Academy Iconic subscription. Freedom of speech and expression is not absolute. As I told you, there are reasonable restrictions. Initially, when the Constitution was enacted, there were four reasonable restrictions. Later, four more reasonable restrictions were added, which means now there are eight reasonable restrictions imposed by the Constitution under Article 19, Clause 2 of the Constitution on your freedom of speech and expression, which means you have freedom of speech and expression, but that should not be against the sovereignty and integrity of India. That should not be against the security of the state. That should not affect India's friendly relations with foreign countries. That should not violate public order. That should not incite offense, violence. That should not be the contempt of court. And that should also not be against the morality or decency of the society. And most importantly, that content also cannot be defamatory. Defamation is of two types: slander, libel. If you are using spoken words to defame somebody, it is slander. If you are using written words, published content to defame somebody, that is libel, and it is not protected under free speech. And in India, unlike in United Kingdom, defamation is both a civil offense as well as a criminal offense. Which means if you defame me, I can either file a civil case against you or a criminal case. In civil case, I will seek damages from you, compensation from you. In criminal case, you can also be arrested and a jail term can be imposed on you. But for this particular topic involving this YouTuber, let's go back to two important cases which originated in Tamil Nadu, which has an impact on free speech. That is very important for you to understand. Case number one, Romesh Thapar v. State of Madras, 1950. Romesh Thapar was a left leaning individual. YouTuber Maridhas is a right leaning individual. Right wing, and now we will first talk about a left leaning case. Romesh Thapar, he was a Marxist, a left leaning individual. He started a magazine known as Crossroads. It was a left leaning magazine. This magazine was allowed to be published, but its circulation was not allowed in Madras. Tamil Nadu then was known as Madras. Long story short, in 1950, the government of Madras banned the entry and circulation of Crossroads into Madras. Why? Because the government felt that if this left leaning magazine is allowed entry and is allowed to be circulated and distributed in Madras, it will violate public order. Matter went to the Supreme Court. Supreme Court was asked by the petitioner, Romesh Thapar, my lord, do I have freedom of speech and expression? I want to express myself. Freedom of press should also be a fundamental right by that logic. Supreme Court said freedom of press is also a fundamental right, although it is not explicitly mentioned in the Constitution. If you look at Article 19(1)(a), it talks about freedom of speech and expression. But nowhere does it mention that freedom of speech and expression also means freedom to press, freedom of press, freedom to publish. Unlike in United States, where it is explicitly mentioned that freedom of speech is your right, the Supreme Court said freedom of press is a fundamental right. And when you are allowing a magazine to be published, that does not mean your freedom of speech and expression has been completely guaranteed. This magazine needs to be allowed to be circulated as well. Because if you're publishing something, but you're not allowing people to read what you have published, you are banning the circulation of that magazine. That means we are not upholding your freedom of speech. Freedom of speech includes freedom of circulation. The government of Madras argued before the Supreme Court, my lord, we don't think that this petition is even maintainable. Why? Because the petitioner should have approached the High Court. Supreme Court said no. Article 32 is also a fundamental right. Under Article 32, you can approach Supreme Court directly if your fundamental rights have been violated. If freedom of press, freedom of speech and expression, freedom of circulation has been violated in this particular case, the petitioner has the right to directly approach the Supreme Court under Article 32 of the Constitution. Madras government was asked, on what grounds did you ban the circulation of this magazine? Madras government argued that if we allow this magazine to be distributed and circulated in Madras, it would violate public order. It would disturb the peace and tranquility in the state. The petitioner argued, where is public order mentioned as a reasonable restriction on free speech? Because I told you that there are reasonable restrictions on your free speech. But original constitution imposed only four reasonable restrictions. Later, four more reasonable restrictions were added. One such reasonable restriction which was added later is this public order. Because when this magazine's entry into Madras and circulation was banned on the grounds of public order, but public order was not a ground of reasonable restriction mentioned under Article 19, Clause 2. And Supreme Court allowed the entry and circulation of this magazine. It is this landmark verdict of the Supreme Court, Romesh Thapar v. Union of India, which prompted the government of India at that time. Pandit Nehru was the Prime Minister. And then Parliament amended the Constitution. First Constitutional Amendment Act was passed in 1951 and public order was added to Article 19 Clause 2 as a reasonable restriction on the grounds of which your freedom of speech and expression can be restricted. If this freedom of speech and expression, if this constitutional amendment was not enacted in 1951, public order could not have been the ground of reason. And what is this public order? I'll give you one example. For example, I'm watching a movie. Let's say Chief Minister Vijay's movie. I'm watching his movie inside a multiplex. I'm drinking an inflated Pepsi, or I'm consuming inflated popcorn, whether it is caramel or salted or cheese, whatever. And suddenly I'm crying, fire, fire, fire. But there is no fire. What will happen in this multiplex? There will be stampede. People will try to rush out and exit the cinema hall. And then because of that, there will be stampede and people may also lose their lives or people may get injured. The police will come and will try to arrest me. I will claim, on what grounds can you arrest me? I have the freedom of speech and expression. And I'm exercising my free speech under Article 19(1)(a) of the Constitution, and I'm saying whatever I want to say. Even if I said fire, 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 what difference does it make? I can say anything under the Constitution. The police will say your fundamental right of free speech is not absolute. It does not mean you can say whatever you want to say. There are reasonable restrictions. One reasonable restriction is public order. When I say fire, 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 in a case where there is no fire, I am disturbing public order because there is stampede and people will lose their lives. This is the significance of public order as a reasonable restriction on your freedom of speech. So, Tamil Nadu's case, Romesh Thapar, 1951. This case is important and the origin is Tamil Nadu. Second important case is R. Rajagopal v. State of Tamil Nadu, 1994. What is this case? This case involves an individual who was known as Auto Shankar. He was a convicted individual, condemned prisoner. And now his autobiography was to be released by a magazine in Tamil Nadu, in which Auto Shankar is also detailing some aspects of its personal life, because after all, it's an autobiography. And this autobiography also deals with Auto Shankar's interactions with public officials, with police officials. Police officials, public officials, they feared that if this autobiography is published, it will defame them. Because this autobiography talks about interactions of Auto Shankar with public officials and with police officials. YouTuber Maridhas has been arrested on the grounds of what? Posting defamatory content online, criticizing the Tamil Nadu government and the ministers. So, defamation is important. Defamation is a reasonable restriction on your free speech. And on this defamation, look at this case. When these public officials approached the court, the Supreme Court said, state or its officials cannot use this excuse that we fear that this content may be defamatory towards us, defamatory against us. And on this apprehension that this autobiography, once it is published, it will contain details which will defame us. You cannot use this ground to block the release and the publishing of this autobiography. If at all you believe that you have been defamed by this content, once this autobiography is published, after that, can file a case. This was the case which became the basis of personality rights in India, another important topic for your civil services examination. Personality rights. For example, we are an academy and we train students for the civil services exam. What if tomorrow we publish a photograph? Photograph, for example, here I am talking about the difference between an academy plus and an academy iconic. What if next to this, we also post the image of All India Rank 1 of UPSC CSE 2025? And we say All India Rank 1 has endorsed this Unacademy iconic subscription. You may tend to believe that since All India Rank 1 has endorsed this program would be great. This course will be fruitful and this course will help us to crack the civil services examination. Although it is true that last year we produced All India Rank 1. All India Rank 1, Dr. Agni Hotri was a student of Unacademy. But what if he was not? And we are using his image to publicize our course without his permission. We are violating the personality rights of this individual. That's number one. Number two, for example, I teach civil services aspirants seriously. Seriously, in the sense, I will not make unnecessary jokes. I will not waste your time. I will not do anything or any drama or theater inside the classes to attract the students. That is how I have maintained my persona, whatever it is. What if tomorrow you will take a clip from this lecture and you will now, because of artificial intelligence, various AI tools, you will modify my lecture in such a manner that I appear joking in the classes, violating the time of the students, misusing their time of the students inside the class. So you are projecting an image of mine, which is not the image that I want to be created, which is against my personality. I can go to the court and I can get this content taken down. For example, Anil Kapoor approached the Delhi High Court that I have the personality rights over this content, over this phrase, jackass. Because if someone else is using this word, others may get a sense that Anil Kapoor has endorsed this product. Personality rights are now very, very important and extremely relevant for the examination. And the origin of these personality rights is this R. Rajagopal v. State of Tamil Nadu case, which was also about freedom of speech, which was also about defamation, but at the same time, it laid the foundation of personality rights in India. What Supreme Court said in this case? Supreme Court said citizen has the right to safeguard their own privacy. Supreme Court explicitly stated that no one can publish anything concerning an individual's private affairs without their consent. If I have given you the consent to put out my video, you can do that. But without my consent, no. That's how Ashwarya Rai, Alia Bhatt, various other superstars have approached the Delhi High Court protecting their personality rights, because without their explicit permission, you cannot misuse their publicity. And the foundation of these personality rights owes its origin to this landmark judgment of the Supreme Court, which is also related to Tamil Nadu. This is how you need to prepare for the civil services examination. If YouTuber Maridhas has been arrested, on what grounds? Defamation. What is Tamil Nadu's history with defamation or free speech? Two important cases. That's something that we discussed. And if you have further questions on this topic, do let me know in the comment section, and do not forget to subscribe to our channel. Thank you for watching.